we have four speakers today. Yeah? And I will first of all invite Meike Nack to come and speak to us. Meike is a women's rights activist, and she is the European representative of Weqfa Jina Azad Rojava, which is the foundation of free women in Rojava. And WJAR uses a holistic approach to challenge the economic, social, political, medical, educational, and cultural difficulties that women and children face in Rojava. And one of its most significant projects is the creation of women's villages, where members articulate their own women's law and organize the politics, labor, and care work based on principles of an alternative feminist approach to the organization of power. And I think it's an extremely exciting kind of work. And I'm quite looking forward to hearing from you, Meike, not only about your work in Rojava, which I hope you will tell us something about, but also about what this actually means for Germans, which is Germany, where you live, and for other European social movements, and what can they take away from your experience working with this, working in Rojava and the women's movement there. So to Meike, the floor is yours.
Yes, first of all, I also want to thank New World Summit. I was still living in Germany. Actually, I'm not living anywhere, as I'm a human being of this world and also traveling around a lot, so mainly Europe and Middle East. I want to also thank for the movements that have been part of my socialization. I want to thank the Palestinian struggle. I want to thank the Basque people. I want to thank African people struggling every day against imperialistic oppression and explosion. I want to thank, of course, the Kurdish movement, which are my dear friends, and we're struggling together since 15 years now. And I want to thank the indigenous movements in Latin America to open my eyes what it is to be a person, a human being of this world, and to learn what are the difficulties and the differences of being human being, to being born in different countries. And I think that there's a lot to do on this world. We have a common struggle to do, and for this reason I wanted to start with an action today, tomorrow morning, something very small. But I wanted to ask you all, we have been discussing now for 2 days already about democracy. Well, I think I want to invite you for a vote. So I think that we can all say that we want more democracy on this world. And the ones that want this from you could raise their hands now and accept this common decision of this conference. So you're invited to raise your hand if you want more democracy. It's step by step. Yani, first of all, we have a common meaning that we want more democracy. So then everybody can raise their hands to struggle for a more ecological life, for an ecological life on this world. Okay. And then everybody who wants to have a gender equality society and wants to continue the struggle for a gender equality society. Okay, I think we're rather, all of us want these main basic things, which is dignity of human life. And now I want to invite you, which is traditional in our movement, to remember the people that have been fallen, struggling for these three main dignities of human being, and to stand up and make with me together a 1 minute of memory of the revolutionaries, of the fighters, of the strugglers, of the babies, of the women, of the old people who fall in the struggle, and to give the promise that everybody is in a very rich, we have a very rich organization here. Everybody's struggling for these things. So to remember the ones that have fallen, and to give our word again that we're going to continue the struggle in our organizations, and much more together also. So please. Thank you. The ones that struggled, that fall, will be the ones that give us the perspective for a continuous struggle. I think it's very important to give this common, how do you say in English? I'm thinking in 4 languages at the moment because there are people from all over the world. So sometimes if my English is not so good, I want you to excuse. I think it's very important to give this word, and every day to think about what are we living for, what are we going to struggle for, what are we organizing our lives for, what is the meaning of our life, and this way to also make an action or to organize our lives. I want to say a little bit, Rada already said, I'm a German and I'm a member of the Kurdish women's movement. I think that we have to talk a little bit also about Europe today, not so much about the politics of Europe. I think that has been stressed already in several discussions, but to discuss also about what it is to be a person from Europe struggling for international needs, for needs of people, for needs of neighborhoods, for needs of communities. And I think, I know that when I was a small child, I was always jealous. I was jealous for the Philistines, I was jealous for the indigenous people, I was jealous for other people that were born into a nation liberation movement, for example, that were born into a revolutionary people that were born into these groups. And I said, but as a German, how can I be part of a revolution? Because I'm so upset with this world. But I don't know how to organize myself because I'm a German and there's no revolutionary movement at the moment in Germany. I think it's a little bit similar for Dutch people and also for other countries in Europe. So for this reason, I got to know the Kurdish movement, and I really thank Abdullah Öcalan, who said, okay, even as a German, or also as a German, you can be a revolutionary person. So I had to think, of course, about my own identity. I cannot say I'm a Kurdish struggler because I'm not Kurdish, I'm German. And I already had 3 very sympathetic speakers before me from my movement. I could also go into the same details of our movement and explain them, but I think the very astonishing thing about the Kurdish movement is that it is really an internationalist movement. So from the beginning, it was not only Kurdish people struggling in the Kurdish movement, but it was also Turkish people, it was German people, it was people from all over the world struggling in this movement. But of course, it is difficult to be a revolutionary person if you don't, if you still have difficulties. Of course, as a German person, I know that there's a big fascist system which has been built up in Germany. it is difficult, it was always difficult in the beginning to say, for me, I'm a German and I'm a revolutionary, or I'm a German and I struggle for something, because of course the state that has been implemented in our heads, and also the restriction in Germany to be active for something is something very wide. So you have it, you don't maybe have a massacre in Germany against people in a physical way. Sometimes there also is, but not in the dimension, of course, like in Middle East. But you have a massacre of being a human being as an ideology massacre which you have against people. So what we did lose in Germany, for example, is to lose our own identity. Our identity as human beings, our identity as women in the sexist society, our identity in a very different way. So for this reason, of course, I had to go back into history. When we talk about future in our movement, we always talk about history first, because otherwise we cannot develop the future. So I had to go back into history and think about, okay, what is Germany, or what is it to be Germany? So for to be German, so not as a state, but as a person coming from a people. First of all, I understood, okay, Germany is not German in a way like the German fascists said. It's a multicultural, multi-ethnical, it's a multi-religious, a multi-clan society. So we have a lot of diversities also in Germany. The second thing, I'm only going to point it because, of course, I have to be quick with my words. The second thing that was very important to go back to history to also think, okay, where were women's struggles? And not only the feminist struggle, but before, what was it? There was, and I think this is very important to know for everybody in Europe, there was a big massacre on women with the burnings of the witches. So there has been the killing of a woman's culture, which has been widened all over Europe in a very strong way. There has been a clan system early in Europe when we still did not have states. There has been upstanding against oppression, like the Rome system, like other empires which we have in Europe. So this has to be. This is something very important that that is to need. There is even the more need to make a research on to understand what is really society, the society we live in now. Where does it come from? So there has to be a very urgent analyze from Europe also as a society with all its influences. So this only for the ones that also want to come with us. Follow us to make a little bit more a research on how can we really build up a society and which way we can build up society and what has historically already upbuilt in this society. So I think this is something very important to know, and especially if somebody has read Marx and Engels, there has been an uprising also against the Rome system, knowing that the system of Rome will never bring justice. So there's really a lot of examples which we can read again and be more struggling and more stronger struggling people. So for this reason, I entered into the Kurdish women's movement with my complete identity as a German. And what we did, I went to several places, but for me it was always important to support the movement with things that I can do very good. So when the Foundation of Free Women in Rojava was built up, I said that I would like to be part of this work to build a bridge between Europe or international and the Middle East, the revolution of Rojava, and also for the complete Middle East. So I think this is something very important, and I think that there is a big need to think about three things. So if we want a really democratic society, want to be part of a democratic nation, as we discussed yesterday already, there has to be more action. Action on a local basic, which my colleagues will talk about, but also action in an international way. There has to be an action to stop these wars which are killing our friends, our other human beings. There has to be more action, and I want to invite everybody to come to Rojava and to be active in Rojava, to learn how is a revolution going to be built up, how can revolution be built up, and at the same time to get ideas for Europe, but also to improve the women's struggle in Middle East, which guarantees for all of us more life and peace and dignity. So what we do, I'm only going to say 2 words for what we do. This has already been mentioned. We open up women's spaces. The project of the Kurdish women's movement is to open up women's villages. There's a need for it, but of course it's also very big exciting to build up women's villages as spaces where women can develop themselves free from patriarchal oppression. Of course, in Rojava, we have the very big impact of the war. We have the trading of women by ISIS, the slavery, all these kind of things. So there is a big need to have women's spaces where women can go back to live in their own identity. But there's also a very big wish. And I think that autonomous women's movement, Dilar yesterday already spoke about, is something basic to open up a emancipative gender equality society, because the free woman is the basic for the free society, which is also the slogan of our foundation. And so there's a need to build up independency everywhere in society, but with all the society together. So this is what our friend Rada said in the introduction also. Independency in ecology, economics, in culture, in these things, with your complete identity to be part of the society. So I think I have to stop now. I would like to discuss with all of you much more, and I hope we can see each other in Rojava. You're all invited, especially the women. You have a lot to do now in Europe, and I want to thank you for this space.
Thank you, Meike, for that very moving account of your work, and I hope many of you here will take up her invitation to go to Rojava very seriously, and sometimes exposure, personal, there's nothing like personal exposure to situation to actually change us as people. But I was quite struck by what you said about being a European or a German, and the loss of your sense of humanity and of what it is to be a human being. And I was reminded of Dilar's statement yesterday that the concept of theft, she says, they stole our language, they stole our history, they stole our existence in some way. And what you're saying is really that if you're a woman in Europe, it's not that kind of theft of identity, of self, of being human, is not really different from, say, other people in other places. And I was also reminded of a writer who said, that those who forget their histories are condemned to to repeat it. So it's very good that you brought up the fact that Europe has a history, and it is to that history that we really need to turn back to and see what we can draw out of that history to understand ourselves, where we are and who we are today. So thank you for that intervention. And I want to turn now to Yunus Osman Noor and invite him to speak to us about We Are Here. Yeah, it's a very exciting. And indeed, Yunus, you are here and we are here, right? And Yunus, many of you may already know him, is member of the Amsterdam-based political movement of refugees called We Are Here, and part of the Refugee Council of the foundation Here to Support. And We Are Here consists of a group of more than 200 refugees who are in limbo, who first organized themselves into a political group in 2012. And this group has really been at the forefront for the recognition of the so-called undeportable people, these people in limbo who can't be deported and who can't get a life here. So we are very much looking forward to hearing from you about your experiences, your organization, and above all, if you can come back to what your experience tells us about a future democracy and what you want the audience to take away from your experience about future democracy. And also, please, if you can just stick to 10 minutes. Thank you.
I think I'm really good with time, so I'll do my best. And I'm really glad to be here today and at the New World Summit and to speak on the term future democracy. But what is democracy? Is it to elect your leader, hold your leaders accountable, or is it government by the people, especially rule of the majority? A government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them directly or indirectly through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. But what if this system of representation does not represent you, doesn't hear your voice, and doesn't count your vote? What if the power of the people is not applied for all persons? This is the daily life and daily reality of We Are Here, a social movement of refugees in limbo. We have applied for asylum in the Netherlands, but have not been allowed. We are expected to leave the country, but we are unable to do so. We can't go back to our war-torn home countries, and we can't go to other European countries due to Dublin regulations. We find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. We live in the Netherlands and inhabit an almost rightless position. We are not allowed to study, to work, or to participate in Dutch democratic practice. We are denied representation in the parliament. Yet, despite this exclusion and the denial of our situation, we have created our own political space, our own democracy, with inclusive institutions and system of representation. We have been denied access to education, so we've created our own academy. An academy where everyone and anyone can pursue an education regardless of documentation or legal status. We are building our own parliament together with our brothers and sisters from refugee collectives from Brussels, Hamburg, and Berlin, on the 3-point in Wals, where the borders of Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands meet, where we will discuss political topics that are important to us. Laws are made about us, but we don't have a say. We will propose a democracy takes into account the people that are being regulated. A person that is being denied that does not stop existing. Everything we've done over the last 3 years has urged people to rethink and critically reflect on what is represented in our parliaments. And more importantly, who is represented in our democracy, who is considered part of the demos. That's why we are starting the Here We Are Academy in cooperation with BAC Utrecht, where we are here teachers about the issue of political representation. It is up to us to introduce a new imaginary and vocabulary. People tend to think of democracy as this very completed subject, and it is, in a sense, but democracy is also something that you can do. Something can be done, and that is easy. When you are obstructed from doing something, when something seems impossible or difficult, you can always find a way to do it. Our social movement is a good example of this future democracy. Democracy is not an ideology or an idea. It is something you have to do. Democracy is a practice. We've already started making a future democracy. It is possible. Thank you very much.
Yunus, thank you very much for that very inspiring introduction to your work. And indeed, it is up to us to infuse meaning into words and to change vocabulary and meanings into words. And I loved what you said in the end, that democracy is about actually acting it out. Okay, if the Constitution, the Dutch Constitution doesn't recognize you, you say, well, I'm here, and I recognize myself, and I do it. So, as you can see, and those are really very profound things, and thank you very much for that. I'd like to move on now to invite Elena Tarifa Herrero to come and talk to us. Elena is a journalist, and she's secretary of the Equality Committee of the Union of Journalists in Catalonia. And she's a feminist and civil society activist. She's a representative of Barcelona Comú, Catalan for Barcelona in Common. And Barcelona en Comú is a municipalist coalition between the Citizens Platform and Broaden Barcelona, a progressive political parties in Spain. And it's also part of an alliance of Greens and alternate left. And Elena's work actually illustrates some of the methods of local organizing, local solidarity building as an alternative to, say, traditional and conventional politics. So Elena, please, the floor is yours. Again, please, 10 minutes, because it's not about cutting you out, but about being fair to the audience who all want to ask you questions at the end.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to this very interesting summit, because I think, well, I'm really happy to be here because for me and for many people, I think most of the people participating in Barcelona en Comú, stateless democracy also means giving the voice to the non-represented in our so-called democracies. And the non-represented are most of the people, indeed, most of the population, because many people from our societies are not participating in social and political life. And for us, this is our main aim, so to give them the voice and to help them to participate, to really participate in our democracies. Well, first of all, I'm going to explain a little bit how it all started with Barcelona en Comú, that, of course, many of you may know about it. It all started in June 2014, where a group of people from the city's social movement in Barcelona, for instance, the people activists from the platform anti-mortgage La PA, where Ada Colau, a former activist leader from this platform, comes from, indignados, neighborhoods, activists, cooperative movements, and other movements of protest in Barcelona came together to invite citizens and progressive political movements to come together to win back Barcelona to their citizens at the next municipal elections that were taking place in May 2015. And during this process, there were held some meetings on the streets of the city to both present the project and listen to the people. There was, for instance, always an open mic for people to share their concerns and priorities. And some groups were set up in almost every neighborhood to discuss these issues and to discuss what we wanted to bring into the program. This was happening in parallel to negotiations with some progressive parties, such as Podemos and the eco-social coalition ICV, well, ICV is an eco-socialist coalition also in Catalonia, and other progressive parties, so that they could join the electoral list that they finally did in January, February 2015. So we all came together, this social platform, citizens platform, and these progressive parties, and under the name of Barcelona in Comú, Barcelona in Common, as all that we have in common was Barcelona, and we wanted to represent the people in Barcelona. Well, so then Barcelona in Comú was really a new share municipalist platform to run in the elections of May 2015, and this was possible thanks to years of neighborhood activism, social movements, and political experimentation in the years before, in the context of economic and political crisis in Spain and in Catalonia, in which political institutions were failing to respond to the needs of the people. A multitude of citizens' movements, as I told you before, mobilized the city and the needs of the people. Movements mobilized the city and demonstrated the power of organized citizens to propose and implement solutions. All of these movements had learned how to self-organize and campaign, so there was a strong, vibrant network of activists ready to channel towards an electoral goal. Social change was blocked from above by the institutions, so the moment had arrived for us to take back the institutions and put them at the service of the common good. That means governing by obeying. So the elections arrived and we won. So this was a huge surprise for us because, of course, we wanted to win, but really we didn't expect that to happen. So really it was something really important, really special for the city because it meant a really big change. But for us, winning back the city is more about than winning the local elections. It means putting a new, transparent and participatory model of local government, which is under citizen control, into practice. It means also implementing fair, redistributive and sustainable policies to respond to the economic and political crisis. So our strategy has been to start from below, from what we know best, our streets, our neighborhoods. And we think that the proximity of municipal governments to the people make them the best opportunity we have to take the chance from the streets to the institutions. That is because cities have always been a place of encounter, of exchange of ideas, of innovation and of revolution. Cities are where democracy was born, and they will be where we can start to recover it. That's what we think. So the institution was a tool, not a goal itself. The movement we've built, it is now more important than ever to put into practice a more participatory form of governance, a more social economy, and to support the proposals made by our colleagues in the City Hall. Regarding the autonomy of citizens, we have provided spaces of participation and other ways of doing politics that mean listening, participating, and collaborating with civil society and what their demands are. For instance, a new way of participation is when we introduce the so-called e-democracy. That means using technological tools to enlarge participation. For instance, when voting the program that we presented for the elections, everybody could vote which were the measures more important for them through computer, through so technological tools to be used for enlarging democracy. And also by using social media to answer to the attacks of the mainstreaming media to our proposals. So we were really active in social media, and that was really important to make people participate and also to let the population know about what we wanted to do. How do we organize? We have different areas of work, for instance, thematical ones, gender, economics, education, health system, social rights, and also local assemblies in almost every neighborhood that meet regularly and are in connection, sending one representative each to the coordination committee and to the territorial committee in Barcelona en Comú. All these areas are still open to the citizens' participation. And they were responsible for the program that we presented to the local elections and are now helping to develop policies led by the municipality. Another key point for us was gender equality. Because for us, a true revolution must be feminist or it isn't. For instance, we have gender balance in all the areas of work from the beginning. And of course, we have really an important women leadership in the person of Ada Colau, who is our mayor. And I think she really represents a new leadership led by women, and from women that were not professional politicians, so were as any of us. We also created, in order to improve gender equality in Barcelona, we created a new area in the municipal government called Regidoria of Feminisms, Life Cycles, and LGTB. This is the first time that in a Spanish municipality we have this kind of area, so gathering all these areas that work for gender equality and sexual diversity. And of course, in this area we are working. Two of our main goals are fighting the poverty of women, because we have found that in Barcelona, the poverty has a women name. I mean, that there are lots of women that are poor than men. And of course, also fighting against gender violence, because we have had a lot of murders of women in our city and also in Catalonia and Spain in general, and we think it's a super important thing to fight. Another thing, another way of doing politics was also to approve a code of ethics in a public and a transparent way. A code of ethics that regarding term limits, salary limits, and transparency requirements for our representatives in the City Council. This was really important, not just because corruption had become such a big issue in Spain and Catalonia, but also because one of the main goals was to do, of course, politics differently. The medium was the message, the process was the goal. So this code of ethics is a document that defines the practices that those occupying elected and appointed positions in public office should carry out in order to ensure a responsible administration that remains in touch with real life. It sets limits on salaries and expenses that guarantee that anyone can get involved in politics, of course, but at the same time, we have to end the privileges that have led political representatives to be out of touch with ordinary citizens. What about our relation with internationalism movement? From the beginning, we were sure that the democratic rebellion in Barcelona wouldn't just be a local phenomenon. We want Barcelona to be the trigger for a citizen revolution in Catalonia, Spain, Southern Europe, and beyond. We know there are similar initiatives to ours that won in other cities and that aim to break apart the current political and economic regime from below. So indeed, since May 2015, none of the Spain major cities, Madrid, Barcelona, Zaragoza, Valencia, Santiago, none of them are controlled by the two main political parties. Not only that, but they are controlled, indeed, by citizens' platforms such as ours, and that were launched under a year before the elections. So that means that they didn't even exist in May 2014. And all these new municipalities, we have created a network of municipalities, of new municipalities in Spain. So I think this is the beginning for change. Indeed, it's difficult to explain the magnitude of this change in Spain. Democratic revolution from below. These cities are now the real opposition to the central government in Spain, setting the political agenda and showing that things can be done differently. So although we as local government don't have all the competencies, we can influence on national politics and also international politics. As for the refugee crisis earlier this summer, Spain agreed to take in just over 2,800 refugees, many of them reassigned from Italy and Greece, but it resisted a European Commission proposal for it to take it in around double that number. But following pressure from cities, led by Barcelona, they've now agreed to take 15,000 more and change their language and tone. And of course, at the same time, we have created a special commissioner in the city to tackle the situation and to organize the huge citizen solidarity movement ready to welcome refugees, regardless of the state immobility. So this is one example that we can influence indeed some of the national or international politics. So what are our challenges for the future? One of the challenges, in my opinion, is being at the same time a social movement and at the same time being in a government and institutions. And the question is, will this kill the social movement or not? Well, I mean, it's difficult to be at the same time in the state and being also as a social movement, but we are working on that. But of course, this is a challenge. Another challenge is finding new ways of participation, because although we still have a lot of participation from citizenship in our assemblies and groups, we know there are still a lot of people who is not participating in those processes in Barcelona, from the poorest neighborhoods, of course, people from migrant origin, and we want them to participate. So we now have to think new forms of participation. And another challenge, of course, it's finding new alliances with left-handed parties and platforms, both at a Catalan level and, of course, at the Spanish level. One first step was we presented for the national elections in December, together with Podemos, and Como Podemos was called our coalition, also in the frame of the Podemos list. So this was the first step to influence at the national level as Barcelona and Como. And of course, we are thinking of establishing more stable alliances with left-handed parties, and also to lead maybe a big coalition of citizens' platforms and left-handed parties that really can mean an alternative for the Spanish government. So we are working on it. And of course, another challenge is how to influence at a national level. And of course, being here, it's one step towards this goal. So to establish alliances at a transnational level with other citizens' movements, and that want a change in democracy, participation. Well, thank you very much. I'm open to your questions.
thank you, Elena, for a very, very concrete example of what is possible at grassroots level in big cities, that too. And this is something I don't think we have addressed adequately here, what it means to be organizing in big cities, large cities. And I think for some of us who come from countries where majority of our people live in the villages, this is really an interesting question that we haven't really, at least I haven't really thought about much. But going on, what the essence of it seems to be, what you're saying is politics has become very professionalized, very careerized, very, institutionalized, and we really need to bring democracy back to where it belongs, which is among the people. And that's what it seems to me you're trying to do in a way, in a very concrete way. So thank you for sharing your experiences with us on that. I would like to move on now to Fernando Burgess, if you can, please, and invite you to come and speak to us. Fernando is, he studied international relations and nationalism studies, as well as political science, before becoming a program coordinator of the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization, UNPO, based in Brussels and The Hague. Yesterday, we talked about, why not People's UN? So here we have United Nations, Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization, which is based in Brussels and Hague. The UNPO is an international, non-violent, and democratic membership-based organization. So it's a very different kind of movement that we are going to hear about, I think, from what we have done so far. And although and it deals with, its members are indigenous people, minorities, and representatives of unrecognized or occupied territories who have joined together to protect and promote their human and cultural rights and to preserve their environment. So again, a very interesting, exciting coalition of communities, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from you about your work. So if you can just talk about your organization and your work, and maybe reflect a little bit on, in terms of the future of democracy, what would you like us to take away from your experience for the future of democracy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Radha. I would like to start by saying that UNPO is very proud to be a partner of the New World Summit. I'm very glad to be here representing the organization which I work for. So I think the central idea to understand why UNPO exists is the fact that we live in a world with estimated 6,500 ethnic groups and peoples, distinct peoples, whereas we have less than 200 members in the United Nations. So something is wrong. Something clear is wrong. And this is where UNPO comes in. We were created to fill this gap, to give a voice to the voiceless. So the challenges of our members, I would just like to clarify first, what does it mean to be a membership organization? Some people are confused with that. We are not an organization for the members, we are an organization of the members. So I am here speaking on behalf of the Secretariat of the UNPO, but we have nowadays 42 members, and these members are representatives of indigenous peoples and nations who have different backgrounds, different challenges, different contexts, but they have in common the fact that they are unrepresented. They are unrepresented. They suffer. I believe that, let's say that the biggest fear our members have is loss of identity. So they suffer with cultural assimilation, they suffer from oppression, and most of our members suffer with the most horrific acts of violence perpetrated in most cases by the states that should, in the first place, respect them. So, UNPO exists to remind every single day multilateral organizations that something is wrong. I was asked before by some people here yesterday if we are a shadow UN, if we are an alternative to the UN. And my answer to that is that yes and no. Yes, if you look at the fact that we are a platform, we offer a platform for people who otherwise wouldn't have a platform at all. We are a democratic platform. We have a General Assembly in which once every 18 months, all of our members come together and they discuss the future of the organization. They have a vote. We elect a president, the presidency. So we are a structure, let's say more or less like the UN, and we exist. So we are a source of legitimacy for ourselves. So the members recognize each other by looking each other in the eyes. So we are, yes, a source of legitimacy. But we are not an alternative to the UN in terms of we don't work to destroy the current system. In fact, when UNPO was founded, the founding members, they wanted to make sure that it would not be perceived by the international community as a new coalition that would incite further conflict. So one of the main cores of UNPO is that it's a peaceful organization. So we don't, by no means, want to wage war against the state. We work every single day of our lives to try to make the UN and the other multilateral organizations more democratic so that our members could have a voice. But this, as you know, is very difficult because the power relation is asymmetrical. So I think it would be almost naive to believe that UNPO could become a solid alternative to the UN running in parallel to the UN, because at the end of the day, the states in the UN, they have, well, let's say, the power. So the UNPO is a unique political experiment. It was founded in 1991 in The Hague. We challenge the international community, this international community that turns a blind eye to what happens every single day in these countries, in these nations, with these peoples. So we try to make the invisible visible with our work. Another question that I was asked is that if it's possible to imagine a structure, a global structure of solidarity among unrepresented nations. And my answer to that is that I believe that UNPO is exactly this. I think that we are this global structure of solidarity among the unrepresented. So the members back in 1991, they realized that alone they couldn't do anything. If together it still is very difficult, alone much less. So they thought that out of this feeling of frustration of not belonging to the international community, they could combine efforts and create this democratic membership, non-violent organization to try to have a say in the international community. It's interesting because when we hold these general assemblies, you put in the same room people from the most diverse backgrounds and cultures and religion, and I only like being able to see that you could. So I think that is the most clear example of the solidarity, and I think it's something that we've been speaking here for the last 3 days about the necessity of inspiring solidarity among people who suffer oppression. So I think that UNPO is exactly this, and we try to be this global structure of solidarity. I think to link our experience with the overall discussion here, and especially when in light of this block, the topic of this block, I think democracy and the future of democracy, democracy is absolutely nothing if it doesn't come together with human rights. So whenever we talk about democracy, I think that we should make sure that we include human rights in the same sentence, because just an example, the current ethnic composition in Rwanda is about 85% to Bahutus, 14% to Batutsis, and 1% to Batwas, which is one of our members. So if you think, okay, if you hold the democratic elections in Rwanda, you can say that the country is democratic, but if you don't have full respect for human rights, what is democracy? So this is my, the perspective that I think we should look at in terms of the future of democracy. One thing that I want to link as well to what Rada said yesterday in her closing remarks. She was talking about the UN and how undemocratic is the Security Council, with only 5 countries with a veto power, and then the relation with the General Assembly, which is 196 countries, which together only have the power to make recommendations. And then she said that, and I was thinking, yeah, and then the members of UNPO are not even able, I mean, if the General Assembly in the UN is unrepresented, our members are even underrepresented. There are even some academics who talk, they use the term fourth world, which I particularly like this term because where sometimes we talk about the first world, well, the second world doesn't exist anymore, let's put it this way, and then the third world, but then the fourth world is what we don't know, is what most of you or all of us in the world don't even know that they exist, because they haven't been given a chance to be in the headlines of newspapers. We don't talk about them, they are invisible. So our struggle is to make the fourth world, to try to exclude this term and put these underrepresented peoples and nations in the international platform as equals. So this is more or less what the UNPO does.